with the pump fake and one dribble inside to the long two, and he makes it. That's been his game his whole career. But look at him smiling. We go, my bad. The long two.
Welcome everyone to a long time coming, another episode of The Long Two. I am Pete Rogers. He is Natty Wallach, and we are a Carmelo Stanthony podcast, but occasionally talk fantasy basketball. Natty, it has been fucking forever since we have last talked, you and I, since we've talked basketball, since we've had sports. How are you doing? How has life been for you since we've all got into quarantine?
Howdy and what's up, Pete? Has anything happened since last we spoke?
I don't think so. I mean, what could have happened?
I'll be honest. I haven't really thought about sports at all outside of the Michael Jordan doc. Really,
which was incredible.
Yeah, that was. It was nice that they released that early, but I'm healthy. Everything's been okay so far. How about you guys in Michigan?
We've been good. Nothing really. I mean, so since Ann Arbor is all built around the University of Michigan, when things were first shut down because of COVID, a bunch of students left. So Ann Arbor, I don't feel like has been that. We haven't really been that impacted by COVID. Obviously, we've all been shelter in place for up until recently, like the last couple of days, and all of your basic kind of COVID things have happened, but it certainly hasn't been like Detroit, which has been a hot spot. And then of course, and now recently with protests for the Black Lives Matter and for George Floyd, we haven't been really impacted by that either, which has been a little bit of I sitting in my house want to feel like I'm contributing, and so I've been donating and kind of doing what I can from my desk, but would love to be able to get out there and kind of be a part of the movement, but that nothing's presented itself around here quite yet.
I'm in Brooklyn, and lots of opportunities have been here.
Things have been going. New York has been a hotbed for everything since quarantine.
Yeah, and I believe the U.S. is still, tops, if you want to call it that, in confirmed cases and deaths. And obviously New York was the biggest of the big hotspots. But the marches have been a passionate and magical moment for the city, and people felt like they regained some of their agency. And we're going to keep it going here. The marches are not over, and I hope everybody everywhere keeps going. I know that it's dangerous, and it's everybody's decision whether you go out or not. And there's a lot of different ways to support, even if you don't go out.
Yeah. No, that's stay safe. Ultimately, is everyone's goal, and I think that it's extra. It makes the whole movement and all of these protests feel like all the more impactful and important when they're set against the backdrop of the fact that we're in the midst of this pandemic that no one knows how to handle it. And so the fact that people are putting their health on the line and their safety, since these protests tend to, let's say, the police aren't handling it as well as they should in most places. But putting your health on the line to get this message across is something that I certainly admire. And it's worth it, obviously.
And even if the cops weren't being less than admirable and outright criminals in certain situations, it would still be risking their lives for people going out and marching. And they know that better than anybody. When I've been out, almost every single person that's been in the marches has had a mask on and has been, not berating, but basically pleading with the police officers who aren't wearing masks for the most part to just put them on. So no matter who you are, wear your masks, try to be socially aware and keep your distance. But this is this moment is worth putting your life on the line for. And that comes down to every single person. But, um, the coronavirus wasn't really the only pandemic afflicting this country. And I think people are much more aware of the other one right now. Um, and it seems like there have been steps taken and measures taken to address some of these things, but you can't erase 400 years of violent, murderous oppression with a couple of bills in June, especially when you know that this is just the start. This
Right.
can't, there have to be a lot of things that occur going past this. So everybody, there's a New York election coming up. Everybody should vote. If you've marched, you should vote. If you've supported the marches, you should vote. Everybody should try to get as much of the people power representatives in as they possibly can, because that will be the best way to really affect change.
Yeah. And it's great to see. I mean, one of the biggest things that I've taken away from this has been seeing how impactful these protests and marches across the US and across the world have been. I mean, Minneapolis has gone on record in saying basically that they're going to be working on defunding the police there, which is huge. Like that's such an incredible transition from where you would think that, the results that you're used to getting from a protest where it's like, well, we're going to, invest in training or invest in, resources for the police so that this doesn't happen. But coming to this such a drastic change feels like this is a breaking point in this country, and it feels like it's a time where this agenda is going to finally be heard and finally make a difference, and hopefully we can start taking steps to racial equality and racial equity, which is something that everyone should have. That should be what the fundamental bedrock of this country is, not what not the racial oppression that has been around for 400 years.
Sure, the people that are marching are the real patriots, are American nobility. They are risking their lives with or without the police for their rights and their freedoms and our ideals, and they're marching for everybody. And the entire paradigm has to be changed. This isn't just a few simple, quick fixes. And the defunding the police thing is sort of phrased improperly, I think. I mean, there was a town in New Jersey that, quote unquote, defunded their police department a couple of years ago. And what they really did was just reform with, new guidelines, new rules, new responsibilities, and a new way to do things. And crime plummeted. And they've done very well since then.
Yeah.
So defunding the police doesn't mean eliminating
right.
the law.
It's not.
Or
I know that's like
cops.
everyone's.
It
That's
means
everyone.
We're going to change.
Right. Exactly. That's the the Republican. They love the response of like, well, how are you gonna everything's gonna go to shit if there's no cops. And it's like, no, it's not the fact that you're just taking police, like removing law and order. It's what it is it's a redistribution of how the funding is going to be used, and investing in communities and investing in social work and investing in these things so that it's not like this. The police aren't this like militarized unit that basically comes in and often agitates the situation more so than helps. And so it's about like investing into communities and taking that money and putting it in other resources to help better kind of the general life.
Yeah, this has been a real portrait of Dorian Gray moment for the country. Everyone now realizes that our face is not as beautiful as we thought that it was. And our sins have absolutely caught up with us, and they've been there the whole time. And people have been suffering from this the entire time. And I don't even know if it's a breaking point more than like we've cleaned the mirror and we can see ourselves more clearly. And the reflection is upsetting and very sad. But everybody has shown who's been out in the streets and who has been working for reform this entire time knows that we can get better.
Yeah.
So people wouldn't be marching if they didn't believe that tomorrow can be a better day. And they're putting their lives on the line to do that. So they should be admired.
Yeah. And I think one of the things that has been huge to come out of all of this is this is called a phenomenal transition, um, is just how vocal athletes. I mean, since we're a basketball podcast, we'll talk about specifically NBA players. Like it's, I love seeing players, people with large platforms utilizing it for spreading this message. And we've seen that throughout the NBA and the NBA as a whole as really helping to spread this message and being on the forefront of kind of like putting these ideas into focus.
Yeah, when the history books are written about this time, there are going to be more than a few, I think, that have a lens that use the NBA as a lens, because this NBA season started with NBA players being put in the position of having to speak about the Hong Kong protests in China. I know that seems like 1,000 years ago, but that's how
Doesn't it? Good God, man.
Yeah. And Daryl Morey sending out a tweet in support of the protesters and getting a big backlash for that. And how funny does that seem now?
Right.
And now the NBA season is going to start up again during a pandemic that is really, really terrible for people of color and in certain geographical areas in this country. And while these protests and marches are going on, which has to do with the other pandemic of racism that's been afflicting the Black community in this country and all people of color in this country for 400 years. And now the majority Black sports league is being asked to open basically, quote unquote, regularly before anybody else. And no one knows about all of the dangers of this more than the NBA players. Like, this isn't something new for them. If you'll recall, several years ago, Thabo Cephalosha, who was on the Atlanta Hawks at the time, they were in New York, and an NYPD broke his leg or broke his arm. I forget which one it was, but it was basically it was his leg, and it was because a cop saw a Black guy. So this isn't anything new. I mean, you can even go back to Cleveland Summit. So it is interesting that the NBA players were put in that situation in China several months ago, and now they're being put into another situation here. And we haven't really heard from Adam Silver. But a lot of the players have been speaking out, obviously, and all of them are in support. But they're being asked to take an enormous risk by opening the season back up again. And so I think it's going to be interesting to see how all of these athletes think about that. And I assume some of them will say no. I think all of them are going to feel pressure to reopen, but even that, that's totally unfair. Why should they? Let's be honest. It's absolutely dangerous. I think all players are supposed to report on June 21st, which is less than 2 weeks away. And there are second waves occurring of the Rona all over the place. Things are probably going to get worse again. And then, the country's asking the majority Black league to go back out and risk their lives. So how they handle this moment will be very interesting. And their platform, it does seem like the NBA players are better at using their social media and platforms than the others. But, at the same time, maybe it's just because there's the rosters are there seems to be a more intimate connection with NBA players. They're not wearing helmets and you see them playing all the time, and the rosters,
and it's smaller rosters
smaller.
Too. So right. Yeah. So it's 15 players. So on your favorite team, most all 15, know their names, you can rattle them off. And then since that is you have a list in your head as a fan of most of the, of the NBA, whereas for the NFL or for baseball, you have to have a way too much free information rattling around in your head in order to rattle off 300 NFL players or whatever.
Right. Meanwhile, in basketball, you can watch Giannis take like 2.5 steps from half court and dunk the basketball. And he was out in the protests. He made a great speech.
Yep.
God bless him. He's amazing. And that's the other thing. The NBA is just filled with cool ass dudes, man.
It
like,
really
there's
is.
so many
like
cool,
just people who
cool
you
people.
want to root for. Yeah, you're totally right.
Yeah. Yeah, we were before the season started. We were talking about like who's going to be pissed this year, and that clearly didn't really happen. And now the rest of the season is, I mean, emotions are it's going to be a hurricane of emotions.
Yeah,
also, they're opening in Orlando during hurricane season.
Right.
Like,
so
I'm kind of skeptical.
Real hurricanes.
Yeah, I remain skeptical that this is even actually going to happen.
Yeah, so let's talk about kind of what the NBA's plan is, because as you mentioned, like there is a plan in place here for basketball to start July 31st, and then they're going to have, I think it's each team is going to play like 8 games to refigure out seeding, and then there will be the playoffs, and then ultimately they're hoping the finals finishes in October, and so it's going to, which is like, if you take out the pandemic here, I am 100% here for the NBA playoffs to be during the summer. Like that, if they can restructure the season and push it back so that the season starts in like January, and then you have the playoffs going from June to August, September, like that seems ideal to me, because then as as a basketball fan and as a sport, like the NBA is not competing with any other real sport. I mean, you have the MLB starting off, but outside of opening week for the MLB, like no one's going to pay attention to how baseball teams start, because there's 62 games. And so, you know, you watch and you're like, wow, this is great. I've watched a couple of baseball games, and then you're like, okay, now I'm bored. Like I'll tune back in when we start getting kind of a sense of where teams are in terms of the playoffs. And so I think playoff basketball through the summer is a great idea. So I'm hoping that maybe this will push the season ultimately backwards. But so what they're doing is it's 22 teams. So they've kind of helped control the number of people there. It's not all 30 teams. It's going to be the 16 teams that have locked up a playoff berth. So in the East, you have the Bucks, Raptors, Celtics, Heat, Pacers, Sixers, Nets, and Magic. And then on the West, Lakers, Clippers, Nuggets, Jazz, Thunder, Rockets, Mavs, and Grizzlies. And then teams within 6 games of a playoff spot. For the West, you have the Pelicans, Trailblazers, Suns, Kings, Spurs, which is great. That means we still have hope for our Pelicans to make it into the playoffs.
I mean, sort of.
and then the East just has the Wizards, because the East is.
And who else? Who else is in? Oh, really? Everyone else is complete garbage. Okay, gotcha. Yeah, the it's so funny, trash. Dude. Like Charlotte has one fewer win than the Wizards, but
but they get the axe because they suck.
Oh man, and you know, okay, so there's a lot of things wrong with this, but I do agree that if it wasn't dangerous, I would absolutely love this, because it would be weird, and like you don't have to watch the garbage, and you get rid of the tanking teams. Although with this format, there is still incentive for a few of the teams to tank. But yeah, like if you could go back to November and December and people actually took the Rona seriously, then maybe that could actually be what is about to happen. But there's like, it's not even that games are going to start July 31st. It's that they're going to have training camps before that. Like players are supposed to report to teams in 2 weeks. And then everyone's supposed to travel to Orlando on July 7th, I believe. Like that's the tentative date, which is like, okay, I mean, so in a month, like everyone's going to get on a plane and hopefully, yeah, exactly. Right. And then they're calling the 8 like regular season games that these 22 teams are going to play, the seeding games. Like it's sort of BS, because almost none of the teams are going to really fall out. And like the teams in the West, they would have to like either go undefeated in order to jump up. Everybody's like has to do better, 1 game better than Portland, I believe. A lot of the math is really weird. Some of the teams have played more games than some of the other teams. And because of that, their winning percentage is going to be different by like 1,000th of a point, even if the seeding games like go 50-50. It's going to be absolutely bizarre. there's no reason Phoenix should be involved, like some but at the same time, like, yes, I am here for being weird. Like, this is cool. I'm glad they didn't just do it like a 1 through 16 seed, because I sort of felt like that would throw like another spanner in the works in a season that already has too many of those. But I don't think that you need 22 teams. You could have just done 20. You could have come up with better ways to actually figure this out.
And there was a
And
whole bunch of ideas. Like, I know Kevin O'Connor on The Ringer wrote basically about like a giant play-in tournament in order to
Right.
figure out who is the playoff seedings, which, I mean, and he made this case, and it's just like, in a year that's as weird as this, like, that seems, especially since Adam Silver has been long trying to figure out like some sort of fun tournament to have in the middle of the year, and like a way to make that, have players be invested in that and have fans be invested in that, and some sort of like mid-season tournament that's not obviously for a championship, but for something else. That like having this as using this as like a weird play-in structure to see whether or not people would buy into that seemed like a great opportunity. They're not doing that exactly, but I understand, obviously there's health risks, and they've taken, the whole point of having this in Disney World is that they have arenas there, they have so many hotels. Like, the point is that hopefully they can just build this like NBA dome in Disney World, and no one goes in and out, and you're there for 3 months. And since you're not having contact with anyone other than NBA players and NBA family who've been tested, that you're hoping that no one then gets sick, or the COVID doesn't spread. If it does get in there, then it's going to spread like wildfire, which is also not great. But selfishly, like, I'm really excited for there to be basketball again.
Oh, sure. And the sentimental basketball part of my brain that's, getting geared back up is like, yeah, but I want to see Bron win. I want to see, Giannis go to the finals, and I want to see Toronto defend their title. And there's all this stuff that I want to see. I want to see Philly in the playoffs and see if they can, make their weird magic work. But we should understand two things. Some of these rosters are already different. Like, LaMarcus Aldridge is not going to be playing. He had surgery. Bojan Bogdanovic on Utah is not going to be playing. He had surgery. So the rosters are already different from the regular season teams that we saw several months ago. The second point is that it's almost a certainty that someone is going to get sick. And who gets sick is going to really determine how we feel about this entire experiment. Like, God forbid, what if Giannis gets sick?
Ooh.
Is anyone really going to take the Eastern Conference playoffs seriously? There's going to be an asterisk around this for the rest of our lives anyway. But what if LeBron got sick? Or what if he tested positive and so was quarantined, but he never got sick, and then the Lakers don't advance during the games that he's out? You know what I'm saying? Like, we don't know anything about this virus, really. And it seems a little bit irresponsible of the NBA to put a bunch of people together when we don't know what exactly is going to happen. We think we can keep people safe, and hopefully we do. But on the other hand, you have to, if you're doing this, there are people in the NBA in the front offices who are like, okay, well, what's the worst case scenario? Someone dies from coronavirus. That is
the worst case. Yes.
That and it's Armageddon, because that's I don't want to go so far as to say that the NBA put people, like they killed them, but like you put them in a dangerous situation, just like Elon Musk opening up his goddamn factory. People got sick because this is how the virus works. And so no matter what happens, there's always going to be an asterisk around this playoff and around this season. Because like I said, the rosters aren't the same. And so that's the part of me where I'm just like, you know what, man, just call the whole season off. Like, we'll start again. And this is the world. Things happen. And it's really super shitty. It's not worth someone getting hurt over. And it's certainly not worth someone dying over. And it's not just the players, like the NBA wants to bring in families. There's going to be staff there.
Totally.
There, the broadcasters. So everybody wants sports to come back because everybody loves sports. But over the next 2 weeks, we're going to really see if this is actually feasible. Because if things get bad again, then I assume a lot of the players are going to say no thanks. Especially maybe for teams that are down a player, like the Utah Jazz. Do they have a chance anymore?
Right. No.
They lost their best score, or their second best score. Also,
yeah, I mean, if people get
Rudy
sick,
and Don Mitch might not be friends
might
right
not
now.
be playing together. If people get sick, like they're just going to be like done. Like season's over. We're not doing anything. That's the cap in the 2020, like the 2019-2020 season. There's going to be no champion this year, which would be crazy. But on the flip side, and this is like you have to if you've taken all the precautions that you think you can do, like the amount that the benefit that the NBA could receive from this is huge. And I personally, as someone whose NFL fandom is on life support and has been transitioning to the NBA and has become more and more of an NBA fan and like feels like that is the league that should take dominance in this country because of the fact that it is of the big four, the most progressive. It is arguably one of the most entertaining, if not the most entertaining. It's just, and so like the fact that if everything works right for them and they are able to play when there is nothing else to watch and everyone is dying for sports, like this could be a huge moment for the NBA to solidify itself as like a real threat and challenger to the NFL, because I don't think baseball's happening this year. I think the owners have just completely fucked that situation to the point where there's no way the players are ever going to like settle with anything. Like, and they shouldn't, because the owners have completely just fucked that up. Like that's all on them. So if you want someone to blame, don't blame the millionaire players, blame the billionaire owners who just don't want to pay for anything. So I don't think baseball's happening this year, which means like this is the chance for the NBA to make ground in what is the sport of America. And I know that that's like a very it feels weird to encourage that amidst a pandemic and amidst like all these health risks that these players are getting into. But if you give them if you trust the NBA to have taken every possible precaution that they can, and the players have agreed to this, and that this is they're going to do everything they can to keep these players healthy. And if someone gets sick, then that's just fluke. Then this is like a huge moment for the NBA to like to claim a spot and hold on to it forever.
Yeah, and perhaps because of that opportunity, I think that's what the front office, that's the best case scenario everyone's hoping for. Like, this is our chance, and we're going to be safe, and, we're going to do the best we can. And if it seems that it's going to spiral out of control and, we're really putting people at risk, then we'll just shut it down immediately. Like, we can always just stop and be like, yep, didn't work. Sorry, we tried. If things do work, then you could also take this opportunity, the NBA and its corporate partners, to maybe send a big hefty chunk of change to some programs that could use some funding. And so you could make this not just about, like the season, but about the year and the context in which this season took place. Several years ago, a bunch of the players wore "I Can't Breathe" t-shirts, and the NBA, I think, is on the ascendant because it seems like it's the least exploitative of the leagues. Like, the NFL is obviously ridiculous. And the Houston owner said he didn't want the inmates in charge of the asylum a couple of years ago. Goodell didn't mention Kaepernick's name in his speech.
God.
Like, it's completely ridiculous.
I mean, like, props to Goodell shout out to the NFL players for forcing Goodell to say something.
Absolutely. That video was great.
But then also, and like Goodell, I will give you the tiniest bits of props for having to doing the right thing, the bare minimum. But also, if you're it blows my mind that in this moment about this movement, the NFL in their statement of like, we are sorry, we should have listened to our players earlier, that you do not mention Colin Kaepernick's name anywhere.
First of all, wear a fucking suit when you're gonna make an announcement like this. Treat it with respect,
Be a
especially
fucking
since,
professional.
dude, like Matt Patricia was really upset. He scolded some reporters because they were slouching or not standing at attention. Like, also, like Goodell and the rest of them knew they were wrong. They blackballed Colin Kaepernick on purpose. Like, they're the best thing the NFL could do, not just for their image, but for their pocketbooks, is to sign Cap right fucking now. Every single game he would play would be national viewing. And they're not doing that because they're petty little bees. And, like Cap stood up to them by kneeling, and they're holding a grudge. Like, people of color don't get to do that to rich white people. And the MLB is... the NFL also has like non-guaranteed contracts, which is ridiculous. MLB is notorious with poor treatment of minor league players and with service time manipulation and, with extorting money out of municipalities, even though all the leagues used to do that. It's slowing down now. MLB is also more international than the other leagues, maybe not hockey, but, people are from all over the place. So it might be a little bit tougher to actually assemble the rosters. And then just the practicalities. NFL is hundreds of people, and MLB has 26 players per team now. And the NBA is just smaller teams, guaranteed contracts. You see everybody's faces. They have historically been a very progressive and, inspiring league. I mean, Jesus Christ, Bill Russell, like Kareem, get out of here. And so I think people feel good about the NBA and feel connected to it in ways that they don't to the other sports, even though I don't want to talk about the aesthetics of each sport. Be your fan and do your, be you. But the NBA feels more like it is connected to the now than the other leagues do.
Totally. No, I 100% agree with all of that. Let's talk. We're going to take a quick ad break, but when we come back, let's talk a little bit of kind of looking towards this hopefully playoffs. So
let's talk real quick about who's not going to be in this whole rigmarole. These are the 8 teams that are not going to be playing basketball. I think they might have tried to plan some loser bracket or something like that, but none of these guys are going to want to play. So anyway, in the West, the Timbercats, alas, they are out of it, and the Golden State Warriors are out of it, and that's it. Everybody else in the fucking Western Conference is the Western Conference.
In case you needed further proof that the West is just better than the East.
Unreal. I mean, Phoenix shouldn't be there, but whatever. In the East,
don't deprive me of some Devin Booker heat check games.
Dude, that's the other thing, is that the young teams maybe have an advantage.
Right? This is why the Pelicans. If it wasn't the Grizzlies in that 8th spot, because the Grizzlies are also young, but God, I really want. I mean, we spent many times on this show talking Pelicans, but God, I want that team to just catch fire coming out of the gate and make it into the playoffs some way, somehow.
Dude,
and maybe the Jazz just fucking lose every game.
The thing is, everybody's had months and months off, right? So some people are going to be rusty, but then other people are going to be healthy and primed. And one of those people might be James Harden, who has notoriously faded in the playoffs every single year because he's so tired, because of the load he has to bear. If you have a healthy, primed James Harden, totally refreshed, along with Russell Westbrook and Bob Covington, I mean, that could, a fully on fire Harden in the playoffs, it seems like it's a terribly dangerous force of nature to me. Especially since Utah, I don't consider Utah a real competitor anymore. Losing Boyant, that scoring is just a death. No. But the other teams that aren't in it anyway are the Cavs, the Hawks, the Pistons, the Knicks, the Bulls, and the Hornets. So Yeah, I mean, like, I like Charlotte. It would be nice to have them in it too.
No, it wouldn't. Don't be nice. Don't be nice.
Okay, fine. But I I like all of the young dudes on a bunch of these
Yeah.
teams. But the fact that the Nets are in it when they fired or I'm sorry, they consciously uncoupled from their coach, like right before this happened. And who the hell? Like, it might behoove the Nets to tank. It might be
Well, there was
better for them.
also there was like that hot second where everyone, like the Nets, were flirting with the possibility that Katie was going to return in time, and like
Yeah.
that was going around for a hot second. Like, oh my god, what if this delay has then allowed the Nets to have KD return, and now you're going to get the full power Nets coming into this playoffs? But that doesn't seem to be happening.
I think that KD's contract, he gets $1 million as a bonus if the Nets make the playoffs, whether he plays or not,
Ugh.
which is just incredible.
Well done. Well done, Kevin. Well done. Good contract discussions there, my
Yeah.
friend.
And like Kyrie is gonna be. I mean, I love the Nets. I want to see what Professor Dinwiddie can do. And if everybody's healthy on that team, then it'll be fun to watch these teams. Obviously, like Victor Oladipo is hopefully totally healthy for Indiana and Malcolm Brogdon. You know, everybody hopefully is healthy on the Clippers. Dallas, Luka's hopefully gotten over his sprains. It is. There's you could see how awesome this could be if we weren't in the present situation that we all find ourselves in.
Right.
So like the teams that aren't playing, they're in a weird situation because they're still on hold, and like the draft isn't going to happen until October, and who knows what's going to happen with like free agency. And I mean, are they even in touch with their players? Like, why would someone from the Pistons front office be calling someone on the Pistons right now? Be like,
Yeah.
like, hey, Derek, are you practicing every day? And he's like, yeah, sure. Yeah, absolutely. You got it. And some of this, I mean, like the Spurs, obviously it would be cool if the Spurs could keep their playoff streak going, but LMA is gone. And
The Spurs
or not
seem
gone, but he's out.
Right.
And
The Spurs seem dead in the water.
it would take a miracle, like for some of these teams to jump over Portland. Like it would be
Right.
really, really, really difficult for any of these other teams but Portland to get in, and it would be difficult for Portland to make it too.
Right.
I think the Pelicans have to actually go undefeated in order to even have a chance. And there's there's so many good reasons why you wouldn't want to put a bunch of these players at risk. But then, you want to be able to honor the players that were like LeBron obviously wants to try to get a ring because this
Totally.
might be the best chance he ever has. And I want to see that. Like, I
Well,
want to see
and
what
you have
Denver
so
does in the
much-
playoffs.
Right. And you have so much for the Lakers, you have so much with Kobe's passing, and like, there's so much sentimentality
Totally.
that's going on this season where
Jesus
I can
Christ, that was
understand.
only January. My God.
Right. And yeah, you can totally understand why LeBron and the whole Lakers team would just be like, pushing for a season to continue because of the fact that like there's so much weight has been on this season.
The consequences of not having a season are also massive. So let's for Toronto, if we just called the season and said it was done, it would mean that Toronto, who's one of the 4 best teams in the NBA, wouldn't be able to defend their title,
Right.
properly. It would mean Philadelphia 76ers, maybe Brett Brown gets fired, maybe they break up the team.
Wow,
It would mean like for the Lakers,
Finally,
was this
they'll trade
LeBron and
Joel.
AD? Yeah, right. Like who knows what the hell they would do? And who knows like what the money looks like going
Mhm.
forward. And
Yeah,
we don't want to be craven about that, but like that's going to matter. The OKC Thunder, I want to see Chris Paul and that 3-guard lineup wreaking havoc throughout the playoffs because we might never get to see that team as it's presently constructed ever again. I want to see, what Houston can do if everybody's rested and hasn't been run into the ground. And it's probably, their coach's last go around there. I want to see Carmelo in the playoffs.
Hell yeah, we do.
Like, I literally have in my notes, like, could this be Carmelo's time?
Oh my god. Oh my god. That would just destroy if everyone stays healthy throughout the NBA whole end of season, and Carmelo Anthony just fucking catches fire and carries Portland into the playoffs and like deep into the playoffs. I feel like the internet would burn.
Especially because like it seems like maybe they tweaked this format so that Dame Lillard would agree to play.
Right. Well, because they were the one dissenting vote.
Yeah. I mean, like, why play if there's no point to it? And I think that was such a good point that the NBA was like, well, that's true. Like, why should the Atlanta Hawks have to travel and, put their families at risk and all the rest of it? Also, the Warriors are going to be the Warriors again next year. And they might have a top 5 pick. And they have Maple Jordan. Like, I had completely forgotten that he is on the Warriors. And D'Angelo Russell,
it's incredible.
I had also forgotten that Andre Iguodala is on the Miami Heat.
Oh my God.
The Miami Heat have a for real chance right now. Like, if Bam comes back, Bammin', if Jimmy Buckets is all good, if their 3-point barrage of crazy dudes is just sinking them all the time, and then you have Iggy there too, like, who knows what they could do?
Well, so before we go, let's do that. Let's talk. Let's do kind of not super specific predictions, but give me in the East, who do you think are going to be the 4 teams who are going to finish in the top 4 in the East? Who are going to be the 4 teams that make it into the quarters?
And this, we're assuming that like optimal health, optimal roster,
everything stays
all
constant.
Everyone
stays
scenario.
Healthy.
Totally.
Everyone is right. Exactly. Who do you think is going to be having a serious chance to play for a title?
Okay, so the top 6 in the East right now in descending order are the Bucks, the Raps, the Celtics, the Heat, the Pacers, and the Sixers.
Right.
I think that the Bucks, Raptors, Heat, and Sixers will make it.
Go fuck yourself.
I know. But here's why. It's totally sentiment. Well, I mean, Philadelphia's beaten Boston 3 or 4 times, I think, this year. But Boston doesn't really have anything to play for. And the other teams do. Like, nothing's going to change in Boston. They're not going to break up the team. They're not going to fire the coach. This isn't like their last time that they can, attempt this. They're arguably going to be the strongest team next year in the East, no matter what. Mm-hmm. And so I do sort of feel like they're not playing with house money, and obviously they're going to try as hard as they can. But the Bucks need to succeed to convince Giannis to stay. Yep. The Raptors are defending their title, and they're better than the Celtics anyway. The Heat look like they're just fully loaded, and I'm hoping that the Sixers, because they're so weird and because I want Simmons and Embiid to be able to stay together, and if they don't, I mean, if they go out in the first round, that team, there's no way Brett Brown will be there. Yeah, it's so expensive.
Also, did you see the pics of Ben Simmons taking a bunch of steroids and looking jacked as hell?
Gee, he must have learned that from all the Boston sports teams.
Not that I'm creating controversy or anything. Nothing to see here, Adam Silver.
That's the thing. Like, I have missed these guys so much. Like, I want Ben Simmons to have an adequate 3-point shot so hard. And I want him and Embiid to be able to stay together. And I love Toby. But anyway, those are my 5. So I think Boston, just because they have that like 1% less motivation, I think they're the one that fall out. How about you?
Sure. I mean, the Bucks and Raptors seem like locks to me. I just don't see those guys falling out. I'm obviously going to say the Celtics make it into a Final 4 situation. I agree with you that the Heat feel like a natural pick. But if I'm going to kind of be spicy, I think ultimately, it's those 4 teams: Bucks, Raptors, Celtics, Heat. If I'm going to be spicy, I can see a world where Victor Oladipo comes back. This time off has been great for him. He was starting to cook as the season before the season basically got shut down.
He had his best game right before it got shut down.
Right. Yeah. I mean, if Victor Oladipo comes back fully healthy and is ready to just go, there is a chance that this Pacers team is just really hard to stop and could make some serious noise and headway and knock out someone like Miami. But I think those top 4 guys seem to be pretty set in stone in my book.
All right. How about you go first in the West?
So the West, I feel like Lakers and Clippers, you have to sign on the dotted line. Like those guys are in. There's too much talent and too much veteran talent there for them not to, like there's no way LeBron and AD are going to come out rusty. There's no way Kawhi and PG-13 are going to come out rusty. So those guys are in. The Nuggets, I find the Nuggets are really interesting to me. And it's because of the fact that it all hangs on Jokic. Mm-hmm. And we saw Jokic start this season slow. And the question is
chunky.
Exactly. Did we get chunky Jokic back, or has Jokic been staying in NBA shape this entire break? I have no idea. He has not been blessing us with workout videos and montages, which is kind of, insulting. I feel like, come on, let's.
I think Jamal Murray joked that that Joker had a 4-pack now. I think.
Perfect.
I think that he's been like, I'm so bored. I'm just
winning
going to work
the championship, then, baby. Let's go.
So dude, they're the Joker's having like Oscar Robertson kind of numbers. Like it's absolutely nuts.
Yeah,
he carried that team from January or from really December on.
Exactly, and so like if he again comes out slow, that's gonna sink the Nuggets, and so you're hoping that he doesn't. And then we've talked about the Jazz, how losing Bogdan Bogdanovic, like you're not going to be able to replace that on the fly. And I hadn't initially thought about it, but your Houston Rockets plug about James Harden coming in fully refreshed, and also Russell Westbrook coming in,
breathing fire,
and having a good time. Both of those guys get a ton of miles on their body, and then we've seen it when they hit playoffs. They don't have anything left in the tank. A rested Westbrook and a rested Harden is going to be dangerous. Like that's going to be scary. So I feel like they can make it into that top 4. And then really for me, it comes down to Nuggets or Thunder is kind of my guys for who's going to be pushing into the quarters. And in that instance, I would break Nuggets. But again, the Thunder have both the young talent, but also have just fucking tenacious CP3 who's going to, break his leg in order to I feel like he is going to be someone who's not going to take anything lightly or half-ass. But so I
think he's been the best clutch shooter of the whole season, I think, or like maybe the last 3 months. Yeah, he's just like no other team has, come back from a deficit in the fourth quarter more than the Thunder.
God,
CP3. What a great cool.
So
dude.
if you were to be like, Pete, you putting $1,000 on your top 4 guys coming out of the West, who are they? I think I would go Lakers, Clippers, Nuggets, Rockets. What about you?
Lakers and Clippers, totally agree. Since we're hoping for the optimal for the teams, I think that means that we have to put Denver in there. Like if we get chunky Joker, then that's not going to be optimal. The difference, obviously, I want the Trailblazers in there. Go Melo and go Dame and go CJ. Fair. They're trying, Jennifer. Yeah. The thing about the Rockets, even though I am excited to see them rested, is that they were absolute butthole on the boards. Like they were just the worst rebounding team in the NBA, and traditionally rebounding matters in the playoffs.
An elite rebounder.
I know. God, poor Jesus. He's probably like, my body's still bruised. I could use another month.
I have not recovered. Could we please have like another 3 months so that I can get ready for Anthony Davis and Jokic and
dude, that's
Steven
the
Adams.
other. Like this NBA season had the 6-7 or less team, where D'Antoni was just like, man, fuck this. I'm not playing a center. They got rid of Clint Capella. Rocco's there. Like the whole thing. What an incredible scene that was, and hopefully we'll get to see some more of it. Yeah, forever. There was so much that happened in this NBA season, and I can't fucking believe that I forgot that Iguodala was like on the Heat, that all these trades happened. But anyway, so Houston not being able to rebound, I think, is a gigantic red flag for that team, and that means that they'll need to be hitting their shots all the time in order to advance. But I do still feel like they're a top 4 team in the West. Like, despite that issue, they're still incredibly dangerous, and I think they're more dangerous than the Thunder. So I'm going with both LA teams, the Nuggets and the Rockets too.
Yeah. Yep. I feel like that's kind of going to be it. Before we go, give me your finals. If everything is staying easy, do you think it's still going to be Bucks Lakers?
Do I still think if everything goes according to plan in terms of, everyone's healthy and the rosters are fine, I would be surprised if the Bucks did not come out of the East. If they don't come out of the East, I think it means that Philadelphia beat them.
Or the Celtics. Yeah, either one.
Sure. Jesus Christ, Justice Winslow, by the way, is on Memphis. I completely fucking forgot about that. That team is Ja Morant, 3J, Brandon Clark, Point Justice, Jonas Valanciunas. Oh, I love that team.
This podcast really should have just been me reading the NBA transaction log and Natty just flipping his shit about everything that's happened.
Dude, because Justice is going to be healthy and you throw him out there. Oh, wow. The Memphis games are going to be fun. I think that a healthy, a fully recovered Paul George from both of his shoulder surgeries makes the Clippers incredibly dangerous. So I think that if everyone's healthy on the Clippers, I think they'll beat the Lakers.
Yeah, I guess I was as you were talking, I was thinking actually maybe a better rephrasing is which would be more surprising, the Bucks or the Lakers not making the finals. And I think the Bucks not making the finals would be more surprising.
I still feel like the Lakers are the sentimental favorite for the entire world. Everybody wants to see LeBron win again, and everybody wants to see the Lakers and especially LeBron win for Kobe. So they're going to have, the wind behind their backs, and it would be great. It would be so, so great if it could be Bron versus Giannis. Not that Kawhi and the rest of the Clippers aren't cool, but they're not as charismatic, shall we say, as the Laker team, or however Kawhi laughs. But the Clippers are a fun team, and God bless Doc Rivers. But I think everybody wants to see Lakers Bucks.
Yeah. Conspiracies Pete for a hot sec.
Yeah.
That in this asterisk season that it's an unspoken rule to let the Lakers win this year. So this is going to be an asterisk finals anyway. And for sentimental storybook reasons, LeBron winning with the Lakers in the same year that Kobe passed, that's going to be too good for the NBA to pass on. So in a year where the championship isn't really going to matter to anyone outside of LA, I feel like they're going to let the Lakers win.
So you think that the front office, it won't come from Silver. He'll have middlemen. But they'll tell the refs, be like, listen, if someone even fucking looks at LeBron the wrong way, they get teed up.
I also think the players are going to be in on it too. Because this is like a deep conspiracy, deep state shit.
Sure.
I think the players are also just going to be like, is Giannis going to win his first championship this year? No.
But see, then I'd answer back and be like, yo, what was the one thing that the whole world watched while we were on shutdown? And it's the MJ doc. And every single player in the NBA, is watching that documentary and being like, oh, yeah, that's right. All that matters is winning. So everyone's going to try to be like MJ and try to elevate their game to the moment. And the thing about, if they're the only show in town, I don't think anyone's going to give less than 157% because everyone's going to be watching.
Conspiracy Pete is pretty high on drugs and drunken. So he the things that come out of his mouth should not be taken seriously.
Conspiracies are flying around everywhere, and the NBA, I mean, this is frozen envelope territory.
Oh yeah.
But that's even the very idea that we would like consider, even though, it's funny, but it's like, oh, what if the front office actually did try to manipulate things so that one player on one team could get the outcome that they desired? Like, that's a fucking crazy thing to even think. Because
I mean, I need that 30 for 30 on the frozen envelope. Let's get that one, ESPN. While we're
let's be sure. Like, the front office has absolutely helped teams before.
Yeah,
I mean, how
let's
many number one
see how
picks
that
can
system
Cleveland
ranks.
get? Yeah, come on. But on the other hand, it's really hard to tell like other players, hey, can you just take a bullet this one time? Because it's a Bron. They're like, yeah, but he already has rings, and like I want to get paid, and blah blah blah. So that's the other thing that's interesting about this is that no one knows what to expect. No one. I mean, I think like no one knows what's going to happen tomorrow, and the weird thing about putting a bunch of players and refs and staff in like one area and then they don't travel around is everybody's going to be there all the time. So if things get a little chippy, they're not going to calm down. And if things go like a little loony, then like maybe we sort of have a fun and loose kind of playoffs, or everyone's having fun and they're just happy to be there and everyone's safe. And the players know that like they're sort of doing this for the people at home. And they try to take advantage of the moment by trying to get some funds to people that really need it. And so I still don't think that this is going to happen, but I do hope that it does, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Well, one thing I can say for certain is that the NBA will be coming back for at least some period of time. And with it, we are now back. So make sure you subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. Search for Fake Teams. We are under the Fake Teams podcast channel. Make sure to follow us on Twitter at the Long Tube Podcast. Until next week, Natty, have a good one.
Yo, stay safe, buddy. Stay safe, everybody. And God bless the marchers.
Stay safe, everyone. You stay as well. Talk to you next week.
Bye.